If it were happening here at King's Chapel, we'd be squeezed in beside one another in the pew. Little room left for your shoulders. All the seats, those facing not only forward but backward, they'd all be filled, in every single seat up here in the gallery. Because we would all be here for this speaker. His TED Talk has gone viral a few weeks ago. And you've gotten texts and Facebook posts from all of your friends who heard him in other towns. You know how it is. There were even a few commentators on the news who mentioned him as a possible presidential candidate. Some were even joking about him maybe being in the next Netflix film, because this man was being praised by everyone, we're told. And who in the world is praised by everyone? So to have this man come back here, right here to his hometown, back to all of us who had grown up with him and, well, teased him and played soccer with him, and, you know, his brother was our best friend and somebody had a crush on his sister. Well, it would be interesting to see what Jesus was like since he'd become so famous. And at first, nothing seemed very unusual. He had read from the scrolls before, just like today. He read often from Isaiah before. It seemed one of his favorites. He was one of those guys who'd always been interested in the scrolls, and he always did have that good, steady reading voice. So, to be honest, really honest, most of us didn't pay too much attention to the words he was saying. You know, we'd heard them before, undoubtedly. We were waiting for his sermon, what he'd say to us, his neighbors and kin. Maybe something about what he had learned from us in Nazareth. Maybe what he learned while he was away. Probably most of us were studying his face, searching for some sign of a way he might have changed, something that made him worth being famous. I bet some of us watched his hands. Did they shake nervously with that scroll? Or did they stay calm? Though, come to think of it, being a carpenter, he had learned how to keep his hands steady even under times of stress. I saw some people near me having that just utterly blank stare while Jesus was reading. You know, the look when you're really lost in your own thoughts. Like, well, did Jesus give me a fist pump or just walk by after the service? Did he bear me a grudge from that time I mocked him? Would he want revenge now that he had power? Or had he forgotten all about me by now? Then the words Jesus was reading finished, whatever it was, and in silence we all watched Jesus roll up the scroll, return it to the attendant, and walk back to his seat. He sat down and every eye was fixed on him. You could have heard a pin drop. Then Jesus said this one sentence. Today, this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing. That was it. Today, Jesus said, today, right now, something in the Torah had been fulfilled. It had been completed. It had been accomplished. Not just way back in the past, a time to remember nostalgically, Isaiah 700 years before. Not even something that might happen in the future sometime later, undoubtedly after we've met a long list of prerequisites. Jesus said that today, right now, something in the Bible had become true. But what? Others around me, I could tell, were a little sheepish too, not really understanding, and I was asking around in one of those whispers, what's fulfilled? What did he read? And one of the elders named Sarah, sitting just across the aisle from me on the women's side, well, she leaned over to say she'd heard what he said. They were lines that she'd memorized a long time ago. So Sarah whispered back to me, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. Upon Jesus, I asked. Well, yes, but on whoever says those words. You mean if I read it, will the Spirit of the Lord be upon me too? Sarah said, well, it could be, but there's more. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me. Anointed? The thing with the oil? Sarah, what's he talking about? It means sent. The Lord has sent you, has delegated to you. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because the Lord has delegated what to me? Listen, child, said Sarah, please listen. Delegated to you to bring good news to the poor, to tell those who have been speared, made prisoners unfairly, that they will be free. Really? Yes, delegated to you to free the oppressed people, the crushed ones, to give sight back to the blind. Well, that one seems beyond me. The Spirit of the Lord, child. The Spirit of the Lord is with you because of all this you've been delegated to do. Really? The Spirit of the Lord is upon you, and it's fulfilled today for those who hear it, those who've listened, who've absorbed it. And now Sarah looked hard at me. Was I listening? She said, we have what we need today. God's Spirit is with us so that we can do these things that God has delegated to us, just like to Jesus, to bring freedom to those crushed, release for prisoners unfairly condemned, good news to the poor. And I looked at her. What we do matters. Dr. Diana Butler Bass is a church historian, and she tells us that for the first 500 years of Christianity, followers of Jesus tried to live the way he did, to do the things he did. People understood Christianity primarily as a way of life in the present today, not as a dogma or right beliefs or a promise of salvation later, sometime later in heaven. By followers enacting Jesus' teachings, Christianity changed and improved their lives, served as a practical pathway for how to live. Earliest Christians were called people of the way of living as Jesus had. She goes on to explain that Justin Martyr, who lived about 100 to 165 after Jesus, said that Jesus' way mended lives. Quote, we who formerly valued above all things the acquisition of wealth and possessions now bring what we have into a common stock and communicate to everyone in need. We who hated and destroyed each other and on account of their different manners would not live with men of a different tribe, now since the coming of Christ live familiarly with them and pray for our enemies. To Justin, the old ways had passed and a new way opened in Jesus. Far from being divisive, Christianity was an inclusive faith that might bring diverse people together. However one interpreted it, both the enemies of Christianity and the defenders of it understood that this new religion transformed people. It gave even women and peasants and slaves a meaningful ability to reorder their lives. It was all based on that teaching to love God and your neighbor as yourself. Later, after that, when Christianity became the religion of the powerful emperors, the church shifted away from a focus on what people did to what they believed, to creeds and philosophies about God. On our chancel today, and we'll reference it during our reception of new members, you'll see the Apostles' Creed. You may have grown up saying it in church each week. Father Richard Rohr, Franciscan, notes this. The Apostles' Creed completely omits any description of Jesus, of what Jesus did while he lived. We say, I believe in God the Father, and then I believe in Jesus Christ, who was born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, died and was buried. The Apostles' Creed, says Richard Rohr, do you notice it leaps right from his virgin birth to his execution born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate. All that Jesus taught, the people he healed, the pariahs he befriended, the way he forgave, none of that's actually included in the Apostles' Creed. Says Rohr, were these acts and teaching of Jesus nothing to believe in? Does the omission in some way explain Christianity's often dismal record of actually imitating Jesus' life and teaching? The Apostles' Creed also does not once mention love, or service, or hope, or the least of the brothers and sisters, or even forgiveness, anything that's remotely actionable. In Richard Rohr's view, the Apostles' Creed and the Nicene Creed portray what religious systems tend to want those who are in power. A God who looks strong and stable and in control. No, turn the other cheek, Jesus. No hint of a simple, Christ-like lifestyle is found in those creeds. Now here at King's Chapel, as far back as our very first reformation of the prayer book in the 1780s, we acknowledge that adherence to creeds is not how we measure a person's faith. Each of us may understand the presence of God in our lives differently. We do not have the creeds. And we do all covenant. In the covenant, we say together to commit to actions. We say to the service of all in the Spirit of Jesus Christ. It's as if we trust that we have been anointed in the spirit of love that Jesus proclaimed, to service and to kinship with others, to the, as we say, the giving of ourselves, not only with our lips, but with our lives. And how do we fulfill the words of Isaiah, cited by Jesus of Nazareth? Oh, friends, you know the ways. One of you uses her legal talents for those who are wrongfully convicted. Another of you helps domestic violence survivors. One of you created an educational system that brought people together across differences, so a fine instrument maker and a house carpenter work alongside each other, discovering all they share. One of you created a space where people could begin to understand their power as a first step in dismantling racism in a program this week at MIT. One of you represents refugees. One of you lobbies tirelessly for state support of mentor programs. One works in town governments to create affordable housing. One of you supports more progressive taxes because it's a way to share wealth. And one of you dedicated your career to improving the healthcare system so people in every income or none receive the care they need. Just this morning at our 9 a.m. service, worshipers came in and told us about racist graffiti that last night was painted on Charles Street on one of the buildings near our parish house. And so we gathered after the service because we had just heard this word that the Spirit of the Lord is upon us to do something when we see that kind of hate in our neighborhood. To you has been delegated for the purposes for which Jesus lived his way. And in you, it is being fulfilled today. It can be fulfilled. So this is the truth that we seek to share. It's not so important what we say we believe, other than that God is love. But it is important what we do with this precious life that each one of you has been given. How well we love our neighbors as ourselves. Today we have all that we need because the Spirit of the Lord is upon us, upon you. Right now, oh God, grant that we may truly listen and hear this good news and then act.